Hey guys, Smith with Minute Maintenance, coming at you on a warm but windy day here in the Midwest. Now today we're going to be locating and going through the removal process of the Blend Door Actuator on the 2007 Ford Expedition. So come summertime, I'll have full access to my air conditioning and heat if I need it. Stick with me, let's get some maintenance done. Alright guys, and as mentioned, before me I have my 2007 Ford Expedition with the 5.4 liter Triton V8 motor in this particular vehicle. Now the reason I'm making this video today is I had one of the viewers reach out, and you guys can always drop your comments and your questions below. We've had several people do that. We thank you for the comments, we thank you for the questions. But one viewer specifically advised she had the exact same truck and she spent over $2,000 on her AC system and she still is having intermittent AC. Sometimes she'll have full AC, sometimes she doesn't. So I'm going to go through the process that I would go through to try to diagnose and locate my issue. First off, let's go ahead and get under this hood here. And come over here, guys. And what we have here is a high and low pressure lines for the air conditioning. They're all on this 2007 Expedition, located off here to the side. On the F-150, I've seen them a little bit closer on the inside, but you're looking for the low pressure line. Now I lost my cap from a high pressure line, but this is the low pressure line here. What you can do is you can go to O'Reilly, Napa, whatever auto parts store you like, and get yourself a can of AC refrigerant to refill, as well as get yourself one of these nozzles. Now the great thing about these particular nozzles is once you screw the can into the bottom here, you take this end, you connect it to the low port side, and you can actually read on the gauge, is your AC full or not. If you're having intermittent cold AC, it's not cold enough, you're not having any cold air come through, that's the first thing I always like to check is my line charged? Had it been recharged, or possibly there's a leak somewhere and now all the refrigerant has leaked out. Now she is advised that she had her air compressor checked and replaced with a brand new one, not a refab one that could have thrown a fit. She said that she had all of her lines replaced. She said that everything's completely topped off and full. So she doesn't believe that to be the issue. She did say something that I found very interesting. She said she heard a clicking noise coming from inside her dashboard. She's having intermittent AC. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's just hot air, but she hears a clicking noise coming from inside the dashboard. Now a clicking noise, when you're trying to turn on your air conditioning switch from AC to heat, that's a telltale sign, guys, that your Blend Door Actuator isn't actuating. It's getting hung up, it's getting stuck, it's having issues. So that's what leads me to believe that might be her problem, is the Blend Door Actuator. But I wanted to go ahead and show you guys where the AC port is as well, just to double check that as well. Make sure you actually have enough refrigerant, otherwise you're not going to have any cold air because there's nothing to cool the air. All right, so let's go ahead and get inside the vehicle, because that's how you get to the Blend Door Actuator, and let's get this dashboard open. All right guys, and here we are on the inside of the 2007 Ford Expedition. Now the Blend Door Actuator is actually located behind the radio. Now I have, as you can tell, anybody who's been in one of these vehicles before, I do have an aftermarket DVD CD player doubled in radio in here. But this process of removing the radio, of getting to the Blend Door Actuator, whether it is an aftermarket radio or it's your factory OEM radio, the process is identical. Now the first tool you're going to need, because we got to get this faux wood plate off here, the first tool you're going to need is a very thin, very small flat blade screwdriver. Now the best tool to use, they have trim removal tools, plastic wedges type tools that you can get in here to pop this off so you're not doing any damage here. But I understand most people don't have those on hand, so most people have access to a flathead screwdriver. So what you're going to want to do is pick an area out of sight in case you do accidentally do some damage. Pick an area that's basically out of sight, up in the corner. I'm going right up here. I'm just going to gently, because I'm not trying to gouge, guys. I don't want to actually cause any damage. I'm just going to try to get between the panel here and the side there until I can release that pressure clip. And see, went ahead and popped out already. There we go. So that corner is loose. Come over here, do the same thing. That corner is loose. Now we can just work our way down. And see, I'm just using my thumb at this point. Yours might be a little bit tighter, so you might want to come through down there in that corner with the screwdriver to get that removed. And then from here, we can just work her loose gently. Well, I promise I was being gentle. That didn't sound gentle, but I promise I was being gentle. Now we got this plate off. Now what you're going to want to do is reach up here in the back side and remove this wire and this wire here. And underneath, it's just some plastic push tabs. I lied. It's actually on the side here. I apologize. I shouldn't lie to you guys. Please don't hold it against me. Right there, where my thumb is pushing in. Just a plastic release, and then she comes out. Boom, boom, boom. And same thing on this side. Now that's loose. Now this is actually, you could remove the rest of these wires and set it off completely out of the side, but that's unneeded. All right. Now try to remember which side went here. You can see how they're crossed over. Try to remember which wire went on which side. Yellow went all the way over here. Black went all the way to the left. So that's an easy way to remember, but you can see the wires actually are long enough. That's not a very good design. They actually are long enough. And its connectors are identical. It is possible to get them mixed up in there, but the crossed over, I know what's what. Yellow goes to the right on my end. If yours doesn't have any marker tape on it, because I actually added the yellow tape because my marker tape before had came off when I was replacing the radio. Once you take these wires off, go ahead and wrap some tape around one side so you know what it is, or put like a red mark on one and a red mark on the side it connects to. But this is where we're at. Now the next thing we need to do to get to the Blend Door Actuator, which is located right behind the radio, is we got to remove the radio itself. And as you see, we have easy access to 4 bolts right here. So let's go ahead and get those removed. All right, guys, and it appears to be a 7mm. See if I can get the camera to focus there. 7mm socket. To go ahead and get those removed and set your socket wrench to lefty-loosey. Let's go ahead and work those out. Once it's nice and loose, you can finish it off by hand. And there you go, guys. 1 down, 3 to go. Work our way through the other 3, and then we'll be at our Blend Door Actuator. All right, now that I went ahead and loosened up, out of my way. Ooh, back plate fell off. Once it loosened up all the wires, you can remove the face plate. You can slide the radio out and set that off to the side. There's no need to actually see all these wires attached. It's actually pretty simple to get those wires disconnected and reconnected. They basically only fit in one slot, but you have plenty of wires here. And just going to slide that off, set it there. And the part that we actually care about, let's go get these guys tucked back out of the way for right now. It's right back there. It's this guy right here, the Blend Door Actuator. Some light on that, see, that makes it a little bit better for you. So this blend door here actually rotates, well, an actual door, it actuates, and rotates a door that allows for the mixing of cold air and hot air. And if the door is not actuating right, if it's stuck, if it's clicking, if the actual knob that turns breaks or falls off, which is known to happen, or the motor itself burns out and isn't as strong, then it's not going to blend all the way. It's not going to allow more cold air. Think of your faucet tap in your sink. It's all coming up. It's coming up 2 pipes to coincide, to co-align in the main faucet. You can add more hot, more cold. If one of those are off, you'll have more hot, then you'll have cold, or vice versa. It's not mixing right. And so that's what this does, is allows for the mix. And she said she's having clicking noises. Sometimes if she hits a hard bump while it's clicking, it'll start functioning just fine. Well, that shock to the system from a bump could actually make the blend door want to kick in the gear and do what it's got to do. So that, all those signs that she described to me makes me sound like the Blend Door Actuator is her issue, as well as she had the AC compressor replaced. She verified that her lines were fully charged. Now, I've actually replaced this exact Blend Door Actuator in this truck 2 times in the last 2 years. They go out. You get a bad part from sitting off the shelf at the auto parts store. It's going to happen. But let's go ahead and get this removed. All right, and for this, we're going to need a 5/16. Go and focus up there, camera. A 5/16 socket. And there's only 2 bolts. 1, 2. And we got this wire right here. And there's just this black tab right here in the front facing right at you. My thumb's bouncing off it right now. Right up there. It's going to push that tab in. Easy peasy. It comes disconnected. And we have bolt 1. Double check back there. I'm not lying to you. Yep, bolt 1, where my index finger is. Bolt 2 right here. And what you want to do is get your 5/16 connected. Now, the hard part about this is, as you can see how long everything is with these brackets here, is finding the right size socket or wrench to actually get on there. And I'm thinking I'm going to need a crescent wrench. So let me go grab a 5/16 crescent wrench to get these things loosened up. All right, just for space management, I went ahead and got myself a 5/16 crescent wrench. And that fits a lot better. And it's a lot easier. These things aren't wound down very tight, guys. It doesn't take a lot of force to hold these things in place. So go ahead and loosen up bolt number 1 here. And have full access to bolt number 2 back there. Now this one, you can only work it that much at a time. But that's what we got to do. So let's go ahead and finish up this bolt. Get the one in the back. Alright guys, now I got both bolts out. Now this back one here is going to give you the most trouble because of the limited space you have. Just take your time. You literally can only get the wrench in there and move it maybe a quarter way at a time. You want to go slow, you want to take your time, you don't want to rush and try to force it because you might end up stripping a bolt and then you'll be in for a world of hurt. So once you get those two bolts out, she pulls right up and now she's out. And that's the Blend Door Actuator, guys. When you buy a new one, make sure it comes out the box, look it over, match up the numbers if you can, but match up the design, match up the holes, match up more specifically this part here, the bladed part. Now this is the part that fails a lot. Look at that, guys. That's just plastic. There's a little electric motor in here that spins this either direction based on your climate control settings to tell it which way it wants to work. Now these teeth can break. It can actually skip the track, and that 9 times out of 10, if your AC is not working and you hear clicking coming from back there, that's this guy. It's the teeth either inside here sticking and like a broken clock, or the teeth are jumping because they've broken off. And when you pull it out, you'll see what the issue is. I've actually had this whole piece come off before and be stuck inside there. And back in there, this is a slot right here, a tooth slot that it slips into. And you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a Q-tip, stick it in there and work it around. Make sure that if you do happen to have had a missing chunks or broken pieces of the blades here, that there aren't any stuck back in there. But before you insert the new ones, go ahead and take a Q-tip and run it through there. And the install, guys, is going to be the exact reverse. Take your new Blend Door Actuator, line it up on the slot, and work it in. Now, depending on where the door is actuated to, the hole and the actual knob on the new Blend Door Actuator might not line up as easily as that one did. Obviously it did because everything was lined up when I took it off. It's going to be lined up when I took it back in. You might have to spin that knob by hand to get it to the right spot. Okay, we'll drop in, and now we just reinsert our screws. And guys, be slow, take your time, be careful. I got giant gorilla hands, so this is very difficult for me. Some of you folks out there might have the smaller hands. Last thing you want to do is lose your screw. So let's make sure you gently work it in there and start working it in by hand. We'll do this one first, we'll get that one, and then we'll reinstall the radio. Alright guys, now that you got your bolts back in place, take your wire, push in by the body. Don't ever push or pull by the wires, by the body of it. Push it in until you hear a nice click. Give it a nice little firm tug to make sure everything's in place. Now we're going to reinstall the radio. Now it's a lot easier to reinstall the radio when you have two hands. Obviously I only have one since I'm filming, and I'm definitely going to need two. But we're going to get the radio in place, put the faceplate on, and then start bolting it back in. Let's go through and do my final tightening on these bolts. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bip. All right, now the radio's back in place. Again, you're gonna need two hands for that, guys. Obviously, one of my hands are on the camera. So you got your full bolts back in place. Next thing, get your wires back out here, because these will have to connect at the top of that trim plate, remember? And remember, yellow went to the right. Or whatever way you decided to mark your wires, those went to the right. So you go ahead and you take your plate here. And if you happen to have taken off any extra wires, make sure you put those back. Obviously, I showed you the ones I did, so really shouldn't have had to take any out. And the way this thing is held in place, guys, you can see these pressure clips here. One, there's another one down here. There's one right here. The connection to these slots on the sides and top there. So try to get those realigned all the way around. Take a look, take a peek. Start at the bottom. Again, this is easier with two hands. Start at the bottom, line it up, and then just give it a firm push. One, okay. So I got one corner in. Before I go any further, I'll go ahead and reattach these wires. All right, guys. See if I can show me doing this. This one went on this side. Push in by the body so you hear a nice click. Same thing on this side. Push in by the body. Where you at? Kind of just going by feel right now. Push in by the body. Whoop, 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 whoop. There she is. Until you feel a nice click. Oh, sideways. Oh, there we go. Click. Boom. So those are reattached. Then it's as easy as going through, make sure it's lined up, and giving a firm push all the way around. There we go. Now, Blend Door Actuator, in our case, was just removed and reinstalled, but your new one should be in place, and you should have full access to your AC and your heat again, and you should no longer have that clicking noise. Alright guys, and there you go. We went ahead and I showed you where the location was for the Blend Door Actuator. I showed you what it's going to do to recharge your AC. Always check your fuses and relays if you're having any electrical related issues. If you think it's just a lack of power, look to your service manual, look it up online for the location of the fuse and relay that's related to the AC system, the blower motor, the climate control. But based on everything that this viewer was telling me, the clicking noise, the fact that she's had everything else changed out, the fact that the noise was specifically coming from inside the dashboard, and she was having intermittent AC, that leads me to believe it's the Blend Door Actuator, an issue that I've had several times with this particular vehicle as well. And it's a very simple process, 15-minute job to go ahead and get that replaced. And it's only about a $25, $30 part. Anything anybody can do at home. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, drop any of your comments or questions below so we can go ahead and try to get those answered for you. And as always, guys, take a minute out of your day to do some maintenance. We'll catch you next time.